The solution to your problems can be found in your story. In this channel, we talk about history, the ancient one, as well as yesterday's history. We also talk about many other things that are happening around the world, especially those that are happening in the continent of Africa. And we also hold our leaders accountable, and we also celebrate those who fought against injustices and those who are still fighting against injustices. I would like to take this opportunity to talk about a man who fought against poverty, who fought against injustices, who fought against many other things. Today, January 15, many years ago, he was born. He was an American civil rights activist in the 1950s as well as in the 1960s. He was also a Baptist minister. He was a freedom fighter. Guess who?
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. One day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He deserves to be celebrated. Why he deserves to be celebrated is because it takes a great effort for someone to become different, because I believe that there are many people who can see that this is wrong, this is right, this is not good, this is good, but sometimes because of fear they become afraid to challenge those things that are not good, to point out those things that are bad. It takes a great effort. So that is why people like Martin Luther King Jr. should be celebrated, whether they were radical or not radical, as long as they were able to stand up and say, this is wrong, enough is enough. It takes a great effort. The reason I say this, let me just tell you a short story. I was told by someone maybe about a year or 2 years ago. This is something that took place in my area where I live. There was a group of about 50 people, black people, early in the morning, and they were going to work. And this person who was telling me this story was passing by, and he saw another man of a different race. He came there to pick them up because they were going to work. He came up with a truck to pick them up. But there's something that happened there. It's like that man that day, he was on his feelings. Then he started quarreling with one of the ladies. And he held that lady on her neck and pushed her down and pressed her down. And all of those people who were there didn't say anything. And I was just a bit angry because even the person who was telling me this story didn't say anything. It was because of fear. I believe so. It was because of fear. Because maybe if it was a black man who had done so, they would have stood up to say, no, this is wrong. But in this case, they decided to be quiet. You cannot tell me that all those people didn't see that there was something wrong here. What happened to that woman was actually cruel. But because of fear, they decided to be quiet. That is why people like Dr. Martin Luther should be celebrated. Even though people like Dr. Martin Luther were like fighting against injustices, fighting against all these things, but it doesn't change the fact that their lives were at risk because they were dealing with a very dangerous opponent, which is a system. When we look at the things that Dr. Martin Luther King did to fight against poverty, it takes someone with guts. It takes someone who understands that this poverty is not just an ordinary poverty, but this poverty is man-made, because we have to understand that the system is very good when it comes to creating poverty, when it comes to making these things so that the system can benefit, so that other people can benefit, because you have to understand that when others are poor, when others are suffering, then others are benefiting. When others are not paid well, then it means then those who hired them are benefiting as well. This is what is happening. So the poverty of others benefits others. So Dr. Martin Luther King fought against those injustices. In other words, if you fight against such things, you have to know that your life is at risk because you are dealing with a system, because you know very well that this poverty is created. In other words, the one who has created this poverty doesn't want to be interrupted. But Dr. Martin Luther King stood up and said, enough, it's enough. He stood up and said, we have to do something about this. So that is why in the world, we only have few people who can stand up when times are not favorable. It's rare. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he also fought against legalized discrimination. That is why I always say, when it comes to the system, they are good when it comes to implementing laws that will favor them, that will favor certain people, that will favor their agenda. Why? Because these people have a mandate. This is something which is very important that we need to understand. But here is the thing. People like Dr. Martin Luther King stood up and said, enough is enough. What does this mean? It means we have to learn something here, because it doesn't mean everything that is legal is correct. It doesn't mean everything that is legal is right, because the system is also good when it comes to creating all these laws, all these human rights laws. Then they tell you that it's legal, you can do it, when in reality it's wrong, when in reality it's affecting your culture, it affects your personality, it affects your relationships with other people. So that is why whenever people would come to you and say it's legal, you have to scrutinize everything. You have to analyze everything before you can say it's right. In other words, your conscience should tell you that this is right. So in other words, Dr. Martin Luther King fought against all these things, fought against all these things that were organized by the system. That is why I say he also held the system by its horns.
When you stood on the Lincoln Memorial that day in August '63, and you said, "I had a dream," did that dream envision that you could see a war in Asia preventing the federal government doing for the Negroes, preventing the society doing for the Negroes that which you think had to be done?
No, I didn't envision that then. I must confess that that period was a great period of hope for me. And I'm sure for many others all across the nation, many of the Negroes who had about lost hope, saw a solid decade of progress in the South. And in 1954, which was, 64, 1963, 9 years after the Supreme Court's decision to be in the March on Washington, meant a great deal. It was a high moment, a great watershed moment. But I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul-searching and agonizing moments, and I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go, and that we are involved in a war on Asian soil, which, if not checked and stopped, can poison the very soul of our nation.
Dr. Martin Luther had a dream, but I like the fact that he realized that the dream was too good, but at the same time, it wasn't going to be easy for the dream to be accomplished or for the dream to be fulfilled. I like that. And what makes it even worse right now is that many people are living in a comfort zone. They think they are living in a dream. I know he represented mostly African Americans or Black Americans, but the fact is that, with due respect, I believe that many people, even in America, have forgotten about these heroes. And that is why they think they are in a comfort zone. That is why right now, as we speak, many people are not doing anything. They think they have reached the goal, but the goal has not yet been reached. I know there are those who feel like they are living in freedom. Yes, some of the things that Dr. Martin Luther King fought for, they've been achieved in America or they've been accomplished in America. But most of the things have not yet been achieved. So that is why Dr. Martin Luther also admitted that it was going to be difficult for this dream to be fulfilled. Yes, he did not lose hope, but he admitted that it was going to be difficult for this goal or for this dream to be accomplished. There are many things that I've learned from Dr. Martin Luther. One of those things is that it takes an effort for someone to stand up. It takes an effort for someone to say something. And it's not easy because there are many people who can see that this is wrong. But it takes an effort. That is why he has to be celebrated. That is why he should not be forgotten. Again, his influence was not only in America, but it went even towards the ends of the world, even here in Africa, because Black conscious movement under the leadership of Steve Bantu Biko was influenced by people like Dr. Martin Luther. Rest in peace, hero.